everyone, this is Ali Greymond, and we are doing the OCD live daily broadcast. These broadcasts are going to be available every day, 11 to 11:30 Eastern Time. So if you have a question or if you're just having a hard time with your OCD today and you want some advice or some guidance, please tune in. There's a chat window on the side, so you can put your question there or your situation. I mean, you don't have to be really personal, like you don't have to say personal details, but just if you have a general question, please feel free to ask. So today I wanted to talk to you about OCD in little details and when is it just a quirky habit and when is it OCD? Because a lot of the time we start out with something that's just a quirky habit, it's not really that big of a deal, and end up with OCD. So just to kind of give you a way to tell the difference between the two and how you can do that. So the best way to tell the difference if something is just a habit or if it's starting to be OCD is what would happen in a situation where you couldn't do whatever habit that it is that you're doing. So if you were in a situation where you had to do something and there was no other way to escape it, right? Like there was no way to do the habit or there's no way to avoid it. Basically, you would be in a scary position that you always avoid being in by either doing your compulsion or by avoiding something. I hope that makes sense. So if in the situation, if worst comes to worst, then you have to face your worst fear. If you deal with it and move on, basically, are able to move on, then there's nothing wrong and that it is just a habit. But if you come across a situation where, let me give you an example of a habit. For example, if you like to put your stuff in a certain way, so either like ordering it a certain way or something like that, and something becomes misplaced, what is your reaction? Are you okay with it? Yeah, it doesn't look good to you or maybe it doesn't look right to you, but you are able to kind of deal with it and move forward? Or are you completely flabbergasted, can't deal with it, don't know how to face it? If it's the second, then it's starting to become an obsessive habit. If it's the first and, although not ideal, you're still able to face it, then it's not that big of a deal. So it just really depends on how you feel when you are faced with that situation. So, and we all have things that are, that bother us. And just because you have a habit of, say, checking the doors or checking your stove or putting things in certain order, it doesn't necessarily mean that you have OCD. Even when you do have OCD and you're doing those things, it doesn't mean that those things are a part of your OCD because, oftentimes we kind of, when we're getting over OCD, we want to drop all anxiety. And you have to realize that people who don't have OCD also have anxiety. They also get kind of a little bit worried and caught up throughout the day with certain things. They just don't take it as far as somebody who has OCD. So when you have these thoughts, it's just important to put it in perspective that sometimes it's just a thought and sometimes it's just, a quirky habit. But ideally, I tell you this, that when you get over OCD, you're going to be able to get over these quirky habits as well if you want to. Or if, not so much even if you want to, but if you're going to work hard at it. Because I'm sure you do want to, but it's just not as important to you, so you kind of keep them going. So once you get over OCD, which is the hardest habits to break, right? The hardest compulsions to stop, the hardest avoidances to overcome, and reassurances and all of that. Once you get over that, then all the rest of it is really, really easy. And I do suggest getting over it because all of this is kind of taking away from your life, So here you get worried about the stove. Here you get worried about, ordering things a certain way. It's not really beneficial and it just creates more of a problem. Also, if you have, I'm assuming if you're listening to this, you do have OCD, and you want to know where to start, this stuff is good to start out with because it's not, either it's very mild OCD, or maybe it's not OCD at all and it's just, just a, like I said, like quirky habit. Either way, it doesn't give you that much anxiety. So when you start out with these thoughts and start, instead of facing more kind of toughest reassurance behaviors, you're facing these first, then it's a lot easier for you to move on and continue with the ones that are a little bit more difficult to face. Also, make sure that other people around you, who are your family or your friends, whoever you're living with, are supporting you in what you're doing. So if you kind of fall off the kind of bandwagon for a little while, make sure that they're there to say, yeah, you know what, you shouldn't be doing that. You shouldn't be checking, or you shouldn't be avoiding. It's not a good thing, because it really isn't a good thing. Even if it's mild, it's still not a good thing. And you know, I mean, as people who have OCD or had OCD, and this kind of includes myself, right? I got over OCD quite a while ago now, but at the same time, um, it can always come back, or it can always try to come back, and it's up to you not to let it, So you have to get over what you're presently dealing with, and at the same time understand the mechanics of OCD so it doesn't come back again. So when it say, for example, a lot of the time it will come back years and years later, like 10 years, 20 years later. So for 20 years you have no thoughts, but you have to, I know it's probably almost impossible, but you have to remember that what you've done to get over OCD now. Because you will, if you're trying hard, you will get over OCD. And then once you do, you have to remember this for the rest of your life, basically. So whenever an OCD type thought comes that really gets to you, like gets under your skin type of thing, you have to make sure to say, no, I'm not dealing with this. I remember it from years ago. I'm not starting this again. Um, because I see a lot of the times, a person will have no OCD for most of their life, and then something happens when, you know, and then they start to remember that, oh yeah, when I was a teenager, I really did have OCD or something like that, right? So um, you really have to make sure that you recover this time, and fully recover first of all, and then, you know later in life, if some sort of a OCD situation starts to provoke you again, you don't make it into the, big giant situation that, like, just like you're dealing with now. So, and these little obsessions is, wait, where am I leading with this? And these little obsessions is where it starts, because any thought can start with, oh well, I didn't check the oven today, and then, and you worry about it, and you worry about it. If you go on vacation, for example, you worry about it for a day, for 2 days, for 3 days, and it starts to create a big problem. um, so you just want to make sure that you're able to handle them and to eliminate them while they are still in their kind of infancy. These thoughts, they don't have much of a hold on you. You can easily deal with them, because you know to be completely honest with you, all of these thoughts have the power to turn into an OCD obsession, specifically because you're already predisposed to getting OCD. So if it's bugging you a little bit, but at the same time enough for you to do a compulsion, such as checking or whatever, um, then one day it can become a big deal. Because, you know, OCD, what is it really, right? In the classification spectrum, like that's why I tell people that, you know, um, don't get so worked up about what your doctor says when it comes to diagnosing the OCD, because people say, well, I was diagnosed, or I wasn't yet diagnosed, and I'm worried about getting diagnosed. And all it comes down to is the worry that, what if you don't have OCD, and what if it's real? And that in itself is a reassurance thing. So your doctor telling you have OCD is almost like a reassurance, to make sure that, okay, yeah, you have OCD, you're safe. But at the same time, you already know that you have OCD. You don't need anybody else to prove it. You're getting compulsions, you're getting obsessions, you're getting thoughts, you're doing all kinds of reassurances from yourself, from other people, like rumination, thinking about, like, rethinking the situations, or worrying about future situations, worrying about the consequences. You don't need to, for somebody who doesn't know you, who doesn't know your case in depth, and probably only heard you for an hour or two, right? You don't need them to diagnose you the way you yourself can diagnose, just because they're wearing a white coat, they're still human. They can still, they themselves can still get OCD. So it's not, that you have OCD, you don't need anybody else's help. And at the same time, you want to make sure that you're doing everything to stop it. And that includes these kind of habits, I would say. But at the same time, it's kind of a fine line, because at the same time, it's very, very hard to achieve perfection in a way that you will never experience a single thought of anxiety ever again. You know, that's just not realistic. You will still get anxiety. You will just not get a 10 out of 10 anxiety. So you might get, probably without OCD, I would say that the highest your anxiety could go is about 7 out of 10. And that's just like when an extraordinary situation happens. But it would never get as high as 10 out of 10. So when you're faced with these types of situations with OCD, it becomes even harder to deal. But without OCD, you just deal with it at 7 out of 10. You know what to do. It's a real situation. You know how to deal with it, basically. So this is kind of I'm just describing to you the different types of situations that you could be experiencing. But again, going back to the situation with the like the mild OCD stuff. Sorry, I'm a little bit tired today. Can you tell? But going back to the situation with the mild stuff, I would definitely say to try to calm it down and try to eliminate it as much as possible. And again, it shouldn't be that hard, because you are already not really that attached to it. You're just mostly doing it out of habit and kind of out of, well, I don't want to worry about it later. But the thing is, you not worrying about it later is reassurance, and then one day you might really worry about it. So you don't want to get yourself into that type of a situation. By the way, feel free to put your question in the chat and I will answer it. Um, Again, if you don't feel comfortable today, I will be here again tomorrow. I am hoping that one day this show will be just me answering questions. So right now it's kind of like I'm just talking about the different topics of OCD, because I think it needs to be heard, and at the same time I'm just kind of, I want to get more of an audience, so we get some questions going and it becomes a big show. Oh, and also if you can help with that, I would really appreciate it, such as sharing and all this kind of stuff. So, but I would say honestly, when it comes to the OCD recovery, it's just the most important thing is just to keep trying and keep going and don't give up. And also, if people who are negative are kind of trying to say, oh well, you'll never recover, or kind of almost like feels like kind of giving up on you. And I'm pretty sure most people with OCD have at least one of those people that just says to you, you'll never recover, and just plays into what you're already worried about, because everybody's worried about never recovering. Like when I had OCD, I never thought I would recover. I mean, it wasn't even in my realm of possibility to recover. So, and I was so anxious all the time, and there was just no way. But once you start applying the right technique, and that's what I'm saying, my technique works. Trust me when I say my technique works. I know you don't really have any way to know this until you actually do it, but it really does work, and I have so many clients who recovered doing this. Now I also have clients who didn't recover, and the only difference between people who recover and who don't recover is that people who don't recover, or maybe not yet recover, just haven't done haven't stopped the reassurance yet. And it's everybody's on their own time sheet. Like it's not a race. Everybody gets to the same point. So I have a question here. What do you do when a person with OCD is overwhelmed with life problems and has no ambition to try and fight the compulsions and reassurance? Is it better to postpone the therapy in some cases? This is a very, very good question. It depends on what those life problems are. Um, See, I would say probably, unless it's something like catastrophic, like someone died, or like a serious breakup, or something very, very serious in your life that turns your life upside down. In that case, maybe it would be a good idea to wait, because the recovery program, or my recovery program, and yeah, and the person says that fighting the OCD leads to more stress. Yeah, so um, unless I would say that unless it's something very kind of severe where it's going to impact your life in every single way, um, I would continue to fight OCD, because the main reason, and I know it's very difficult, and when you're dealing with stress and all of that on top of it, it makes it more difficult. But unless this, like I said, unless the stress is something really monumental, I would say that you need to kind of put OCD recovery almost, if not above whatever you're dealing with, then on the same level. Because if what you're dealing with is not a death, it's not a breakup, it's not something monumental that will change your life forever, OCD does change your life forever until you get over it, basically. And if you don't get over it, it will change your life forever. So because of that, I would say that it's vital that you start dealing with your OCD situation, and almost put the other stuff second if possible. If not, deal with them equally. Just try to kind of nudge some stuff aside, in your real life, to make a little bit of room for your OCD recovery. But I wouldn't put it away, like on the kind of in push it back to later, because see, with OCD you don't stay the same. You either get better or you get worse. If you're say for example, if your stresses are gonna last another week, you can wait. Week is not going to make a difference. But if it's a long-term stress, like something like, school or work situations, or something that's not easily solvable, or maybe like marriage problems, or just relationship, family problems, I would say that you need to put OCD on the same level. Because if you wait 6 months to start the recovery, you're in these 6 months, you're going to be that much worse. So there is really no point in waiting, because it's going to be so much harder for you to bounce back now, bounce back then if you wait. And at the same time, after 6 months, um, who knows if some other stress is going to come. I'm just saying, like, 6 months is an example, right? But you don't know if other stresses are going to come into your life and continue to stress you out. So I would actually keep going unless it's something serious. And if it is something that serious, then again, just like I said, like a week or two, deal with your real life stuff, and then deal with the OCD. And really, if you like kind of get down to the bottom of it, dealing with OCD is dealing with your real life stuff, because the whole recovery like from OCD is about not focusing on OCD and focusing on your real life. So you are doing already what you're supposed to be doing if you're focusing on your real life problems. And that's why it's also good to kind of use this time, because your mind already has something that it's very occupied with. So it's good to kind of, you know, keep it occupied with something rather than it shifting back to OCD. So thank you for the question. Also, another thing is I wanted to say to you guys, if you would like to get my books, get sessions, or just want me to answer a question in private, my books and all of that is available at youhaveocd.com, and you can email me privately at info@youhaveocd.com. So I guess if there's no more questions, we'll end it here today, and I guess I'll see you guys tomorrow.